Kiri makes her way over to the small table in the centre of the room with a happy swing in her steps. It really is going to be an exciting day, she muses. She gracefully spins around and grabs the 2 bowls from behind her back as she passes by the table with incredible ease, the whole manoeuvre taking less than a second total. Bowls in her paw, she looks over to Frederick and his 4-legged friend with excitement. She can't wait to see everyone's reactions. "Come on," she enthusiastically calls over to the 2 of them. Frederick looks down to Bubbles, next to him, and says something to them, laughing briefly. The blood beast pup growls something in return and makes a little jump with their forelegs. Together they walk over to her, and Frederick says something to her as he approaches. "That was pretty cool, not gonna lie," he compliments her. "You think I could do that?" he asks Bubbles, whispering to them. The Crimson Beast makes a short bubbling noise in response, seemingly amused. Kiri smiles at their carefree falling around and politely holds the door open while doing her best friendly attendant impression. Frederick says something to her as he exits the room. "Thanks." Bubbles trudges after him and also gives her a quick, polite half in passing. The 2 then wait outside for Kiri. She flicks one of her ears as she follows behind them, curiously eyeing Bubbles as she thinks about their weird mannerisms, especially about how the little beast acted when she played around with them for a bit. Almost like a person. The thought of something that deadly being as smart as your average gentle being makes her feel all kind of weird for some reason. Brr. She shakes to get rid of the sudden shiver running down her spine. "As long as you don't give it a reason," she mentally repeats Kirsan's words. Trying not to dwell on that thought too long, she closes the door behind her and motions to Frederick with the half-empty bowls in her lower paw. "Was the food all right? You only ate part of it," she asks. Frederick just looks at her questioningly, that oddly endearing look on his face. She holds the bowls up in front of her and tries to use his still very unfamiliar gestures to get the point across. "The food, was it all right?" she motions. He looks back and forth between her and the bowls, looking at her helplessly. "Bubbles ate the meat, and I ate the fruit," he responds, unsure. Kiri holds his gaze for a few moments, beginning to feel at a loss. With a defeated sigh, she decides to just drop the topic for the time being. To the void with that, no use right now. She shakes her head and then nods to the side, hoping he understands her. "Forget about it, not that important." She doesn't really like those boring, stuffy traditions to begin with. He just nods with a neutral but friendly expression, before he looks back to Bubbles, the fuzzy creature starting to pester him and chatter again. He doesn't seem to mind it though. If anything, he actually seems to enjoy it, for some reason. She mentally shrugs at that, briefly observing the 2. The way his narrow eyes perfectly keep tracking things, the absolute ease at which he keeps falling around with a deadly killing machine next to him, the absolute lack of panic on his part, even though he just woke up in a completely unknown location. Could his people actually be predators? He doesn't act like a prey species would, that's for sure. And he does have fangs. The furless being laughs at Bubbles again, and pets the chitinous crown on their head. Oh well, in any case, that's an issue for another day. Kiri makes a quick trill to get his attention, and both he and the blood beast next to him immediately stop falling around, looking at her like a couple of siblings who have just been caught doing something by their mother. "This way," she motions, swaying to the left, her ears flopping over a bit as she does so. They each give her different signs of acknowledgement, and Kiri turns around with a bit of a flourish, leading the group to the kitchen down the corridor. Frederick and Bubbles keep talking on the way over, and Kiri subtly listens in on both his unfamiliar sounding language and Bubbles' somehow coherent noises. How do they do it, she wonders. You think the big lizard guy will be there too? Good point. He pauses briefly. But what do you think she wants to show us then? Oh, you think so? I don't know. They seem a bit too civilized for that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's probably more realistic. Nah, don't be ridiculous. I'm certain they'll let you have some if they do. Sure, I'll ask should the opportunity arise. Just please remember, don't eat too much yet, alright? Bubbles leans against his left leg and starts purring as they continue to walk behind Curie. I swear to God, you cute little manipulator. They proudly declare. She could swear he is somehow making fun of his companion, but she also can't really imagine someone actually being stupid enough to dare and taunt a creature as deadly as a blood beast. They start approaching the kitchen, and Curie signals them to wait for a moment as the group arrives in the doorway. Curie then looks inside, poking her head through the curtain. Oh, hey Noir, she happily calls out, as she spots the old, Raoul Kier sitting inside. He slowly opens his eyes and looks at her. You seem excited. Does this have something to do with our guest? He rumbles, sipping at his leaf brew. She nods. Standing behind her, outside the room, Frederick feels a bit lost and looks at Bubbles, wordlessly asking them for advice on what he should do. They simply shrug at him, not sure what to make of it either. Great, he says, to no one in particular, staring at the air, a headless Curie and some brightly coloured fabric in front. He can hear conversation on the other side of the curtain, but he doesn't understand a single word, except maybe the slightly butchered pronunciations of his and Bubbles' name, of course. But that doesn't really count now, does it? He stands around long enough to start wondering why this particular room has a curtain, instead of a door like the rest of the rooms he saw. Bubbles gently nudges him from the side and gives him an encouraging growl, almost as if they were sensing the tension building up inside of him. Don't worry, I've got your back. He looks down at them, and the young creature looks back, meeting his gaze. A warm sensation spreads in his chest and drives away the uneasy feeling in his stomach. Honestly speaking, he might have been feeling just a wee bit anxious right now. Just a little, honest. But they are a team. A goddamn great one at that. Thank you. After a few more moments, the conversation on the other side has stopped, and Curie pulls back out of the curtain. She eagerly grabs Frederick's uninjured wrist and doesn't wait for any kind of reaction, as she motions him to follow her. She simply steps out, grabs his wrist, and pulls him into the room. He gives a short cry at the sudden pull, doing his best not to trip. Inside, Frederick has to do a double take. The somewhat drab metal walls and floors from earlier having suddenly been replaced by dozens of beautifully woven carpets that are placed all over the floor, chaotically overlapping each other as they completely cover everything below. The walls look like the interior of a yurt, albeit quite a bit more Arabic in style than the ones he has slept in. Even an outsider like him immediately realizes that this must be the heart of their home. He also starts to notice a certain theme that seems to be going on with these people. A pretty one at that. Curie lets go of him and quickly steps out a few paces in front, turning around to face him. "Yeah," she proudly exclaims with her arms outstretched, an enthusiastic smile on her face. He needs a few moments to take it all in. The tent-like room is roughly the same size as a typical living room back in New Vienna, about large enough to fit roughly 8 people comfortably. Carved wooden cabinets line the edge of the room, and the large table similar to that in his room demands attention from anyone who enters, this one considerably larger than that tiny little coffee table from earlier. Something loosely resembling to those ancient cast-iron stoves that use wood as fuel stands next to one of the cabinets, and something is placed on top of it. Most notably, one of the Pagolian bearded dragon aliens is sitting on the table. Their black eyes are moving as they stare at him. If he had to guess, they would probably be up to 3 meters tall, standing, and they certainly aren't the skinny type. The reptilian also seems kind of familiar to Frederick. Maybe that's the one who carried him. He gives them a friendly nod. Thanks for having us. Curie gestures to the table as she says something to him. She then walks around the circular room and sets the 2 bowls down on the counter, starting to rummage around in a different container. He simply walks over to the table and sits down cross-legged on the surprisingly comfortable cushions on the floor. Bubbles sits down on the floor next to him, barely a head shorter than him in this position. It feels a bit weird at first, but it's no big deal, and the feeling of awkwardness goes away quickly as he adjusts his position. The whole arrangement reminds him of those typical traditional Japanese tables he has seen in popular animated series. The reptilian's nostrils flare as they breathe out, still continuing to stare him down with those cold eyes. Frederick starts to feel a bit uneasy again, but part of him also doesn't want to yield just yet. The 2 of them keep on staring at each other, neither wanting to lose, until the hulking mass across the table suddenly starts roaring with laughter. They call out to Kiri. They take a sip from their steaming cup, calmly settling down again, and then hold out their empty claw, palm facing up as it hovers over the table. They rumble, pointed teeth showing as they talk. It feels like they just told him their name, but he doesn't have the slightest idea which of the noises they just made is supposed to be. Frederick simply improvises and leans over the table to give the intimidating lizard a sort of high five. Name is Frederick, and that's Bubbles. Nice to meet you, he smiles. Kiri, who's been rummaging through some of the cupboards, gets up from her crash position and puts some sacks, pottery vessels, and a cooking pot of sorts on the surface next to the stove. Chimney, see if you have me over here room, she calls over her shoulder. The lizard chuckles, a deep sound not unlike rocks grinding against each other. She quickly washes her paws and then swiftly turns around to make brief eye contact with Frederick, motioning towards the reptilian. Kroganar, she explains for him, flashing him a sympathetic, knowing smile before she turns around and continues with her work. So, that's their name. Crow-Noir. Thanks, he calls out across the room. She simply flicks her ears in acknowledgement, her tail softly swaying from side to side as she concentrates on the task at hand. He leans a bit back on the cushion, sub-vocalizing the name. God, I am so going to butcher that. Bubbles gives him a smug grin at that.